Walt, like usual, we had another busy week in the autonomy markets with some slightly surprising news. Rivian announced they're going into autonomy. They announced their own chip. They announced their own Lidar. Waymo came out and said, yes, 450,000 rides a week. We're cooking. Wayve struck a huge deal with Nissan. And we got a little update from Tensor. But let's start with Rivian. What do you make of the news that Rivian says, hi, we're going to do a Tesla light system?
Yeah, I mean, let's kind of break down what they said. In the near term, meaning in first quarter of next year, they are launching and trying to charge for something, which is $2,500 one time and $50 a month. But that's on the current hardware. And, I got some questions. Well, this is undercutting Tesla. I mean, assuming Tesla doesn't change price, but it's undercutting with something that is clearly not the same, as I understand it, at least initially, meaning that they're going hands-free, and they'll have lane change on command, meaning you hit your turn signal in order to change the lane. You and I both know, the Tesla FSD does far more than that. And even the auto parking and merge features are not coming in the first quarter. So I'm not sure how you charge, even if it's at a discount, for those types of features. So look, on the grand scheme of things, it's positive, right? Because if you look at Tesla's, penetration of people that get FSD, it's still low. I think there's low awareness of it. You want more companies out there pushing this and saying this is a value-added service that you're going to want, even though maybe initially, what Rivian is providing is less. The bigger news is the hardware upgrade that is planned for later in 2026, which will include a chip that they designed, replacing, Nvidia. And a lot of the autonomous companies that we've talked to obviously have close partnerships with Nvidia. Nuro comes to mind first and foremost. What do you make of this decision for them to design their own chip?
It's not surprising. It's part of if you want to call it a global trend. And we've seen where Nvidia open sourced an autonomous driving stack on Hugging Face, where Nvidia, with very strenuous terms of what you can and cannot do with that data, Nvidia's clearly trying to own automotive, while the market's saying, listen, we don't want to be beholden to one supplier. So you're seeing a growing shift away from Nvidia. But I want to get back to what you said comparing Rivian to Tesla. To me, that's not the comparison. The comparison is GM Super Cruise. It's a very similar system to GM Super Cruise, where they're using pre-map routes going up to 3.5 million miles in North America by the end of the year. Point-to-point is going to come in 2026, but hasn't been proven yet. So to me, the comparison is GM, not Tesla yet.
I mean, that's an important point. I think also in this hands-free, they talked about 3.5 million miles of roads in the U.S. and Canada, where the lanes are clearly marked. I mean, you and I both know, and anyone out there with Tesla FSD, that there's no limitation on the number of miles driven, so it's not even remotely, in my opinion, the same. And in terms of in terms of what they're charging, you could say it's $50 a month versus $100 for Tesla. But my Tesla didn't cost me $100,000 to purchase. Rivians are very expensive vehicles, and obviously total cost of ownership comes to play. What do we know about the next hardware? Because that's probably the bigger news. The self-developed chip, but other stuff that they're throwing in there.
They're throwing the whole kitchen sink at it, Walt. It's the Gen 3 hardware. It's going to have 11 cameras, 5 radars, including a front imaging radar, and 1 Lidar. That, no surprise, was developed in-house. You're a Wall Street analyst. Where's the cash coming from to develop this all in-house?
I mean, I kind of respect the fact that they're taking the Tesla type approach, like build everything on your own, your own chip, your own Lidar, this, that, and the other thing. The difference is Elon's ability to raise capital. I mean, obviously in the early days, he had some nerve-wracking times at a variety of his companies to come up with the capital. But to your point, the capital to spend all this money on the chip, to reinvent the wheel, in terms of the chip. Same thing with Lidar. Like if, Lidars are so cheap, and I don't know if do we know for certain that it's designed on their own, but maybe it's cheaper to design it. But like, there's a lot of great Lidar cameras out there. I just wonder, it's already a very expensive car. I wonder how much these additional sensors, 11 cameras, 5 radars, all these additional sensors are going to add to the total bill of sales and what those cars will cost. I don't know if they talked about that at their meeting.
I'm going to ask you the big question, the controversial question that I think a lot about. Is Rivian distracted? They spun out a micromobility company with a chip. They said, oh, we can also go into robotics. It seems that they're trying to be everything to everybody when they should focus on building a profitable car company first. Am I reading this wrong?
Yeah, I think you are. I don't think they're distracted. I think they're moving or skating to where the puck is going. And, other OEMs should look at this in the same way. Obviously, GM with Sterling Anderson is going to go down that path. It's going to be harder for Sterling to move that super tanker a different direction. But if the future is autonomy, as you and I both believe, then for sure you need to be heading down that path. And maybe if the end game that they see is full integration of their own sensors and their own chip, obviously what they showed in terms of the Lidar embedded in the windshield looked great relative to here we are year whatever with Waymo, and they're still they're buying cars separately like a Zeekr and then bolting on this stuff separately. I mean, I think the aspirations of Rivian are the right ones, right? Now the question is, I guess, execution and ability to finance. But look, if they can execute, if they have good engineers, then the money will flow to them. So I think in some respects, it's a risky bet. It's kind of like all in, but it's probably, if you really want to be the winner in the long term, it is probably the right decision for the management team. What are you going to do? You're just going to end up reverting back to just selling electric vehicles? Like, is there a future in that, given our shared view on where autonomy can be in the not so distant future?
The future's not electric. We had news this week that Redwood Materials is pivoting away from making batteries for electric vehicles to data storage batteries. The future's autonomous. And I always say the future's autonomous, the future's bright. So Rivian has to skate to where the puck, the great Gretzky line, you're right. I just look at the balance sheet and the cash flow, and you bring up GM. Yeah, they got the cash from the balance sheet to do it. A lot of bureaucracy, but they've got the cash to do it. I just think that Rivian, I don't know where they're going, and I'm not buying the story that they're selling.
They're going to be, what they're trying to be is Tesla, right? That's where they're going. And, where is Tesla going? They want to be, have all these rideshare miles, people owning, autonomous vehicles for their own cars. I mean, that is what they're planning for. So I think, we should applaud them because their vision is probably not different than our own. The question is, do they have the right people? Do they have the ability to finance? And in terms of like, can you actually build everything on your own? I mean, one of the things that they showed was this attendant for the car. And, it's like basically like Siri. And it's, this reminds me a lot of the Apple or T-Mobile presentations I go where they stack the back of the room with all of their fan people that are fanboys, I guess you call them, clapping and clapping. And they were showing this thing where you moved a calendar event from 3:00 in the afternoon to 4:00 in the afternoon. And someone yelled, "No way," as they're like announcing this. And I'm sitting there looking at this. It's filled with latency. Like this is like this is why Siri sucks, right? There's latency. Unlike anyone that's dealt with the ChatGPT, or with Google's, when you're discussing back and forth with the AI, you can interrupt mid-sentence and have a flowing conversation. This is like old school Siri doing stuff that others are building. So I'm not sure, like, to me, that is in some ways a bad sign. Like, do you really have to build everything? And like, can you not rely on stuff that, is externally commoditized? Like, maybe I don't fully appreciate the value of that the long term. I do appreciate the value of your own technology, your own chip, maybe even your own sensors. But like, does it have to really be everything? And then, people that are bullish on this was, well, isn't that what Tesla's doing? You're supportive of what Tesla. I mean, I'm not always supportive of Tesla doing everything on their own. There are things that you can outsource. But I don't, so I kind of go back and forth, but the Siri thing, the attendant thing really kind of, that for me ended on a kind of an odd and not great note in terms of that presentation.
What I'll do, I throw up the caution flag and I question that because the biggest trend now in AI and software is open source. There is great models for voice interaction with AI models that is open sourced. Why not use something like that? Or why not go partner with an 11 Labs and white label it? Why do you have to build something in-house when if you want to call the data repository is already there to build something great? Because Apple failed with Siri. You've been on CNBC lately, so and you've offered opinions on that. It's just, do they want to be Apple of AI? That's what that clearly states to me. I don't know where they want to go.
I think they want to be everything. And again, that is the Tesla approach. And, in some ways I respect them for it, but, in other ways, like pick your battles, do the stuff that is important. I'm not sure developing your own agent. And again, I don't want to over focus on this because they could easily drop this by the middle of next year. It's kind of like they probably just threw it up there. Why not? That's not the meat of the presentation. The meat of the presentation was our own chip. We're going to have new hardware. We're going to, we're with the new hardware at the end of 2026, we will expand to have it look more like where Tesla FSD is today.
And staying on the we want to do everything approach, RJ even mentioned they're looking at Robotax. I mean, well, where does this end?
Well, I think in their minds, it probably ends with them selling lots of cars, maybe inputted into a robotaxi network. Although, he was asked about, RJ was asked about robotaxis on, I think, CNBC and didn't really have a firm answer. I think it was kind of like, we're so focused on the technology that's secondary, wondering like, where is Uber here? Like, this would seem like a good partner for Uber to step in and say, hey, we're going to buy X number of your cars at the end of 2026 and go live in 2027. Not sure what his views are there.
Huh, that's the great Uber bailout. First it was bailout Lucid, then it was bailout Rivian. That's what it seems like to me. But
I mean, that's not a bailout. They're partnering with technology companies that can really bring strong technology to market. And look, in an AI world, we just don't know who can have that rapid pace of technology. It's just hard. I mean, there's got to be a certain number of people out there to hire. The question is, like, Rivian's got a stock. It hasn't necessarily performed all that great. Can you attract the people that you need to execute on all this internally developed stuff? It's not just about having, the cash. Like, they talk about $200 million to develop some of this stuff. I mean, these are almost like numbers that you hear that are getting paid for like individual software engineers by Meta to develop AI. And this is like for their entire chip budget, I guess. I don't know. But again, I'm encouraged. I think it's positive for the industry. Obviously, there's a lot to prove there. But Grayson, there was, I thought they had an existing JV with VW. So how does this impact that relationship as far as you can tell?
they do have a JV with VW. It's a $5.8 billion JV with VW. And partnerships are about friendships and marriages. The autonomy stack is not part of that JV. VW has nothing to do with that. VW, for all practical purposes, bailed out Rivian and saved the company. And yet they're not going to capture the upside of the autonomy stack when VW has historically struggled with autonomy. If I'm on the VW board, I'm asking a lot of questions about my partner here.
I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know the terms of their investment. When you keep saying bailing out, I'm not sure. I mean, this company had a very successful IPO, one of the largest IPOs in the history of the market. So I think you're using bailout a little loosely there. I'm not familiar with that particular investment. But in the case of Volkswagen, okay, they don't get access to the autonomy stack. I guess the question for Rivian then becomes, let's assume for sake of argument, even though you seem to be very skeptical, but like suspend your disbelief for a couple of minutes here, Grayson. I know you can do it. If Rivian does build an autonomy stack that actually works, do you think they stick with the kind of the Tesla approach and kind of do it their own and make it themselves, or are they going to be more like others and try and license it and go back to Volkswagen and other OEMs and license those drivers for other OEMs to have the Rivian driver in those vehicles?
I think they want to do the Tesla approach. It's very clear from everything there. But RJ did say at AI and Autonomy Day that they're opening to licensing. But where's the opening for licensing? You have Neuro, very successful deal with Lucid. You have Wayve, which we'll get to in a minute, successful deal with Nissan. Then you have the 10,000 pound gorilla Tesla out there. Then you have Waymo, which, what do we get? 2 sentences, 3 sentences with an MOU with Toyota. So they're lurking out there. If let's say Waymo, Wayve, Neuro commercialize at scale, what does that leave in the marketplace? And then you have Bolt with Stellantis. So where's the opening?
I mean, I think there's plenty of OEMs. I'm not going to list every car manufacturer. Anyone can ask ChatGPT to give you a list of OEMs and who their current partners are. And in addition to that, a lot of these OEMs, especially like Toyota is a perfect example, will partner with multiple autonomy companies. I don't think anyone, outside of Waymo has fully perfected, autonomy at scale. So I think the market's open. I'm not sure the market's closed. With all due respect to all these companies you mentioned, I don't think that precludes them from doing other deals with other autonomy companies, or if these deals don't work out over the next year or so, where they, reposition themselves with whoever happens to have the best technology in the market. On the flip side, you make a good point. Like at some point, if the market gets away from you, and let's talk about Nissan and Wayve. Huge deal for Wayve. If Nissan, things go well and they're doing all this stuff with Nissan and Nissan locks in step with Wayve. First of all, does Nissan even allow Wayve to exist as a separate company? Or conversely, is Nissan alone enough for Wayve to monetize what its investors have put in that thing? I don't know how those relationships evolve over time. How is it that Nissan would be exclusive to Wayve, but Wayve is not going to be exclusive to Nissan? Something's got to give there. I don't know. I have an opinion on how that's going to play out, whether these autonomy companies merge, whether there's multiple different models on different drivers out there. But I think it's still early. It's early. But I guess I go back to the culture, and it seems like the culture, at Rivian is more like Tesla and not really wanting to go down that path. And that is just a more challenging path because, there's just more capital dollars and more risk associated, but the payoff obviously is going to be much bigger. And look, both of us talk about can OEMs truly be the future? We've seen what happens in trucking and how it holds back their autonomy partners. We see how slow these companies move. Maybe you don't want to be partnering with an OEM and you want to be thinking about contract manufacturers instead.
Contract manufacturing, I'm bullish on it, and I made the prediction, I'm going to stick to it, is that at some point Foxconn is going to enter this space for autonomy in a big way. I'll give you a further prediction that Wayve at some point will have a deal with Foxconn. Foxconn is looked at, and the deal fell through, but purchasing a Nissan factory in Japan. So that's going to come, and contract manufacturing is going to scale. And then Stellantis is out there. I could see a point in the future where Wayve gets a deal with Stellantis, and they become, I'll use the rich term, they become an arms dealer at the end of the day. And instead of content, it's the Wayve driver.
You keep mentioning Foxconn, but was Foxconn really a company before Apple made it a company? So I think when you think about contract manufacturing in a changing market, where AI is creating this type of disruption, we'll see who emerges. We'll get to Tensor later, but they're doing some contract manufacturing. I believe it's in Vietnam. It doesn't necessarily have to be Foxconn. Obviously, they're the ones we respect today. But let's move on to the OEM Nissan, which signed this definitive agreement with Wayve. Again, huge, I think, for Wayve. Unlike Rivian, not geographically fenced or fenced by a certain number of miles. The one thing and by the way, the promises are in 2027, you'll have the first Nissan model in Japan. So again, 2027, right? That's, out there. That shows you, in a way, how fast OEMs can move. Even for Nissan, which I think is a great company, can move very fast. And then early 28 is when they're talking about broader hands-off, eyes-on system. The thing that was confusing to me, though, Grayson, is, in the press release, it said that it was, there's Lidar in there, right? And that seems to be the indication from Wayve. We know Wayve, is working on a camera-based system. And then there was an article out of Automotive News that, includes quotes from someone from Nissan that pretty clearly states that this is going to be a camera-based system. The goal, it says, quote, a system that enables point-to-point hands-off, eyes-on autonomous driving on the highway in the city. Nissan is testing the technology in an electric prototype packed with 11 cameras, 5 radars, and Lidar. But the end game here is for a camera-based system like Tesla, which is clearly stated in this article. It doesn't quote anyone, but it doesn't, they were clearly interviewing someone from Nissan. So what's going on here? Because we had this earlier debate in terms of what Uber was saying about needing LiDAR or not needing a LiDAR, even though they talked about a camera-based approach. Is Wayve a camera-based system or a LiDAR-based system?
I'm going to give you the cop-out answer. It's a module system that can use camera only, or it can also use LiDAR. I know it's a cop-out answer, but it's a true answer.
That's fine, but it just seems to me that, the end game here is that they want to get to camera-based, but maybe not. I mean, again, we know the cost of LiDAR is not expensive. If you're Wayve, you're going to do whatever your OEM. I mean, if their business model is to partner with OEMs and not go down this, hey, we're going to make it on our own. You're going to do whatever your partner wants. And I guess for a lot of these OEMs, they're probably largely scared by everything that they've heard about not having LiDAR in there. So my guess is, LiDAR will be a stronger component. It'd be great to have Wayve management discuss this more. We need like another Bigelow battle at CES this year where Wayve takes a stance on the importance of LiDAR. Because there's obviously companies like, Sterling Anderson at GM who strongly believes that this cannot happen without LiDAR. So where does Wayve stand? And, even if it's not religious, at least defend a camera-only approach, which clearly there's plenty of indication that they, that is on their roadmap for whatever OEMs would like to embrace it.
Because if you look at OEMs that have embraced LiDAR, no pun intended, Volvo, that didn't turn out too well. I don't know the true story of why it didn't turn out well, but it didn't. But Kasser, the CEO of Applied Intuition, said that the OEMs are in the business of pennies. And so you have to remember their margins are so thin. So I think cameras are going to take a big part of that. And yeah, I think at some point Nissan's going to go camera only. And at some point, Waymo will commercialize the Emma paper, which is a camera-only system. What vehicles? I'm not giving a prediction on that. But at some point, they will commercialize that. So we will see more camera-based systems throughout the global automotive market.
So speaking of camera-based systems, our friends over at Tesla, it's now December 12th when we're recording this, released tomorrow. Still nothing happened this week in Austin, but we did have a tweet from Elon claiming that, in roughly 3 weeks, they're taking the safety monitor out, which is great. And I think, being full knowledge of past claims that Elon said, I mean, you're 3 weeks away and you're still claiming it's going to happen. It sounds like they're on track for Austin. So we're definitely looking forward to getting down there and in the car without a safety attendant, the guy that had his, if you go back to our old videos, his hands on the door release button. Definitely want to go and check in on that Avomo warehouse, see what's going on there in that relationship with Waymo, and maybe get an update on AV Ride. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that this is the definitive confirmation that they are going safety monitor out in Austin in 2025?
I don't think there's any definitive answer with Elon's public statements. I view it as a positive indicator, but I don't think it's a definitive answer.
Even 3 weeks out, you don't think that's a definitive answer?
No. I don't think anything's a definitive answer.
I hear you. That would be something else, though. But I guess we'll see soon enough.
So if they do, which there's a leading indicator that they will go driver out, attended out by the end of the year, is that going to be the geofence that you and I were in, or is that going to be in the giant geofence? What's your prediction on that one?
I know you think it's a smaller geofence. I mean, whatever they're operating now, I'm not sure why it shouldn't be the same. Right. So if they do it, it will just launch it with what? And then the next step is obviously ramping the vehicles, which, unlike Waymo, you're not having to sit there and have someone put sensors on things. So they should be able to get to the number of cars that we're hopeful for by middle of next year, which is 300, 250, 300, whatever it was by the middle of 2026.
And when they do remove the safety tenant, you and I will go down. We'll visit, as you said, the Avomo depot. We'll go see how many vehicles Zoox has, as we found their depot. The Inspector Clouseau hat went on. He found that. And then to our friends at VW Mobileye, put us in the VW Mobileye ID4 van. Let Walt and I experience that. We'll love to experience that when we're down there.
We saw it drive by. I think we tried to flag it down when the last time we were there. But yeah, hopefully this time Mobileye will comply with the request. Now, meanwhile, the big dog in the space, Waymo, lot of news on them, as always, every week. This week it came out, and Waymo has confirmed they're now doing 450,000 rides a week. A lot of discussion about scaling of autonomy. 450,000 rides a week, up from 250,000 in April. So obviously very good growth, despite being limited severely in the growth of the supply of vehicles. Thoughts on the number?
It's only a matter of time before they hit 1 million rides a week. Waymo is scaling. They have debunked the Uber narrative around demand generation. It's clear that, and I don't have the history in front of me here, that Waymo is on its way to being the most successful graduate of other bets. All the years, you remember all the activist investor papers, they should shut down Waymo, they should shut down Waymo. Alphabet's proving it's scaling, but then I'm going to put my Walt hat on. How do we get to scale and get to profitability? That's your hat, but I'm saying it's working, it's scaling, and it's becoming a business.
You know what else was a huge win for other bets, Grayson?
What's that?
Where it appears that it will be soon? SpaceX. Google put in, I think bought 10% of the company, 9 or 10% of the company, however many years ago. And now they're talking about $1.5 trillion IPO. That's a pretty good win for Google as well. Ironically, with Elon. Now, this wasn't the only thing that came out on Waymo this week. We had fully autonomous driver out in San Antonio and Orlando. So some more announcements that way. Do you think Orlando, obviously the most important thing in Orlando, no offense to those that live there, because Winter Park is very nice, been there, it's beautiful. Disney. Do you think that there is any integration with Disney? I mean, Disney was very busy partnering with Sam Altman of OpenAI this week. Where's the partnership? Oh, wait a minute. They're suing Google. so maybe that relationship between Disney and Google is not that great. What do you think's going on with the Disney situation?
When you were given the hype there, I thought you were going to further hedge your bet and say Universal Studios, but I digress on that. So the roads, they're public, so they could technically legally operate inside of Reedy Creek. It's like the Florida Amusement Park management now because of the fight with DeSantis. I don't know. To me, if you cannot go from the Orlando Airport, MCO, and for the insiders, it's Mickey's corporate office because it's a giant cash register for Mickey, or from the Brightline station to Disney World, what's the true value? I don't live in Orlando, but you have the tourist numbers. People go there to see the attractions. They go there to give them it's a high 4 to Mickey. Well, not a high 5. So they go to give Mickey a high 4. It's got to happen. That's the value to me in Orlando. I'm sorry, it is.
Yeah, you are right. I apologize to my friends at Comcast for not shouting out Universal. But, I mean, look, Disney is a multi-campus property. That would be kind of ideal for that. But, maybe at least an airport to Universal deal should be struck with Comcast, and they can... we know that Waymo's been doing a lot more advertising in their cars. Maybe Universal should buy out the cars and wrap, because they're trying to get, as they try, Universal itself is still in the growth phase, that they're still haven't gotten to full capacity yet because they're trying to ramp up their technological and personnel issues. So could be a good advertisement, could be a good partnership. Maybe we can make that happen at CES.
Do you know what the greatest troll of all time would be? You have a Waymo wrapped in a Harry Potter world driving through Disney World. That would be one heck of a troll that would make your friends at Comcast, I'll say, in my opinion, very happy.
Let's see if we can make that happen. I'm going to see a couple of the Comcast team at CES, and maybe we can pair them up with Google and figure this out. What do you make of on the Waymo's ad business? I mean, I think there's been some more tweets and things on Reddit showing Waymo wrapping more of these cars with some ads.
I think it's great. And then also, before we get that, I also want to let the audience know Waymo did go driver out in San Antonio. So now back to the ad business. I think Waymo's going to have a growing ad business. So when you have the Sabrina Carpenter album, Man's Best Friend, came out, they wrapped the Waymo vehicles in the Sabrina Carpenter wrap. And then we have photos appearing on X and Reddit this week, Mariah Carey's Christmas album. And so it's like, okay, there's a lot of, if you want to call it, popular culture advertising going on. And you cover this. If you look at the growth of Uber's out-of-home ad business, it's going. Look at Instacart's ad business. Waymo could have a pretty big ad business there, and that gets really, really interesting.
We first talked about this concept with Coco. I think Serve probably does it as well. So it makes sense that you would use these things as billboards. The question, though, is like the flip side of that is the stuff that we discussed when we were in Austin, where these Waymos look very different with all of their sensors compared to a Tesla, which quote unquote blends in. And I think Tesla picked up on that theme on their last earnings call, and they're talking about the value of blending in and being like a normal car where you're just hopping in the back of a Tesla as opposed to this gigantic robot. And it's debatable which is better. Maybe you feel safer with all these, chunky things and you feel more techie. But if you're wrapping this stuff in ad, then once again, you're separating yourselves out. You're not blending in. And does that in any way, do you think, increase the anxiety? Not from the ads themselves. Obviously, there's buses and taxis that get wrapped with ads all of the time. But just once again, emphasizing you're getting into this high-tech thing at a time when, we don't really have broad consumer adoption yet.
Well, let me ask you to put your light shed hat on here for a moment. Do you think because the Waymo vehicles stick out, they're more obvious, they can get a higher ad rate dollar because of that?
Yeah, I'm sure from an ad standpoint, the money is there. I'm just questioning whether, if you believe, which you did historically, that blending in is better for autonomy than not. I think part of it you were tying into cars that were getting lit on fire. And I pushed back on you saying like that is a very small percentage of the total, although apparently it happened again in Seattle, a couple of Teslas getting burned up in this past week or so. You know, it's more of a question to you. I think it's fine for these cars to look different. And it's if anything, it might draw more interest of people wanting to hop into something that looks different. But you know, are your views revised there in terms of blending in? Because you were the pro blending in guy.
I think over time, yes, you have to blend in. That's this, it's called society, the culture of building trust. But then the business capitalist side of me says, oh no, let's make these things big roving billboards and make more money. So you're pulling at two sides of me here, Walt.
I think you just want to have like Shrek's head on that big Lidar sensor on the top of the Waymo. Waymo in general, by the way, is getting more part of popular culture. Maybe advertising on them helps them. You know, obviously the bus recall got them on mainstream media. You know, we discussed that last week and the problems we have with that. You also had a baby getting delivered in the backseat, so I think that's probably positive, right? It kind of provides the human side of a Waymo car. I mean, you see these local news reports about babies getting born in the backs of taxis. So here we have one in a Waymo, and then the weird one was, which I'm sure many people saw, was someone about to hop in their Waymo and some dude was like in the trunk. Where would you rank that? Is that, you know, they say all news is good news. Was that good press or bad press where the dude was stuck in the trunk or hiding in the trunk of the Waymo?
That's a headline from The Onion. That's what I think. That is just like, hello, hi, I'm here. Good to see you. Weird. We don't know why the gentleman was there. Weird, but giving birth in a Waymo, the first child ever born in a Waymo, is a really good positive sign for society. Because, and I say that having done years of research, and now you're starting to see medical studies at the NIH. You've seen stuff out of Cedars-Sinai, some other large hospitals, where they're looking at the positive health implications of autonomous vehicles. And you're only going to see that accelerate in the fact that somebody gave birth to it. And we've had reports, and Waymo has confirmed these, that mothers that just gave birth to their babies felt more safer taking a Waymo home than driving. So we're at that tipping point there, Walt.
I love it. I love that connection. 9 out of 10 dentists, your top 10 dentists or whatever it is. Okay. I love it. Okay, so a lot of great news from Waymo. Obviously, Elon may or may not be delivering at the end of the year. And then, you know, you have our friends Uber. And, you know, I know we both believe that we are the definitive source on autonomy. But to be clear, we have talked a lot about the whole scaling and the amount of supply of cars. And I found it interesting that this week Uber picked up on that theme. You know, Balaji's in investor relations there made a long tweet about scaling and basically saying like, oh, you need cars and it's not going to impact us in the near term. You know, things that we talked about in terms of risk, but also I think perhaps maybe downplaying how that Waymo Uber relationship is developing. Even Dara, I think, was interviewed, I guess it was Bloomberg, talking about the $1 trillion plus opportunity, but focusing on this, you know, we're going to have 10 plus markets at the end of 2026. It's going to be around the world. We're the biggest hybrid network, like really hitting. I mean, the stock took a hit at some point in the middle of the week, but just playing up this, trying to address this autonomy overhang that kind of exists in the name. What was your read on Balaji's tweet and you know what Dara was saying around the world?
Some people say the best offense is defense. They're clearly on defense. Balaji's tweet to me was a, I don't want to say a surrender flag, but it was a flag of caution. Okay, we're on defense. Then Dara going out there and giving this interview to Bloomberg, hyping it up. They're trying to take control of the narrative, and that goes back to what I've said, and I said it again. There's a divorce on the horizon. Something has given there, the fact that they're playing offense and defense at the same time. And interestingly enough, in the interview with Bloomberg, Dara talked about the Asian markets, which you and I have talked on this podcast till the cows come home about Europe. And to some degree, we have talked about Asia. And he specifically highlighted Hong Kong and Japan. So I'll give you two predictions. The Hong Kong partner will be Baidu. The Japan partner will be Wayve. So those are the two predictions there. And let's not forget, their arch rival, Lyft, who now has a presence in Europe through the FreeNow acquisition, has a partnership with Baidu for Europe, where they're going to be deploying next year in Germany and outside of Europe into the UK. So battleground overseas, but Uber's, they're on defense and offense at the same time, trying to get a hold of that narrative.
I don't fault them. Like, I think it was a very good tweet by Balaji talking about, again, the supply issue. This is the thing that we're focused on. It's the supply. Like 2,500 cars is not that much. On the flip side, though, of that, by the way, the cars are not going to expand dramatically next year. Like, you're going to get to 5,000. We talked about that last week, but it's coming, right? At some point, you do get to manufacturing. So no doubt that in 2026, not much of an impact. 2027, bigger impact. 2028, you're telling me it ain't going to be a lot of scale? I mean, let's scale this. 2 million cars in the market. Like, how many cars does Waymo really need to have a dent in the market? They don't need 2 million, right? Those cars are working 24/7 available. You don't have guys kind of coming in and out. They don't have to have every ride that's out there. I think humans can handle having a separate app for the times when they're not in the service area. And as Waymo has been showing and flexing for the past 2 months, because of AI and the generalization, like, they don't have this limitation, this mapping limitation, as they continue to expand. So, I mean, I get the messaging, but the messaging at some point runs out. And frankly, in the near term, it's not going to mean much if Tesla does get 300 markets in Austin, and Waymo does start to ramp that volume. It's these near term. I've seen this in telecom before. It's those extra 10,000 net adds on a subscriber base of millions that are meaningless to the numbers in that quarter, but it's signal into what is coming in the future. And it really comes down to, do you think the demand for autonomous vehicles is going to be strong enough that they're not going to require outside platforms to drive that demand? Maybe they'll require it if there's multiple autonomous platforms and there's a competition factor to it, and it's more delivering demand and competition. But let's see how the technology plays out and how many competitors there really are.
Waymo is a brand. Waymo is on its way to becoming a verb. They don't need platform demand. That argument to me is null and void. And also, you haven't really heard that argument come up very much now, because we got the numbers of the 450,000 weekly rides with 2,500 vehicles. Okay, so that narrative's over. We're going to get our first real data point in and I don't know if we're going to get at the end of Q1. I hope we will. Waymo, Uber, same market, competing. And I want to monitor quarter over quarter. Does Uber's market share start to go down as Waymo ramps up in Dallas? And then going to the back half of 26 into the first half of 27, let's watch the London market. When they start competing and we start getting data, if Waymo starts eating into that market share, it validates everything I just said.
Well, it'll be fun to watch, to see how this market develops. Let's give a quick shout out to Serve Robotics, someone that you've hosted on Road to Autonomy. We always like it when companies say they're going to do something and do it. They said they were going to hit 2,000 robots in the market, and they did it. And like, again, to put that in context, Waymo's got what, 2,600 cars in the market? Yes, I know it's not the same to have a delivery food robot to a car, but just give some sense of scale. I mean, that is a lot of robots. So congrats to the Serve team. So we hope to spend a little time with them at CES, as well as a lot of other companies. So it should be a great CES this year that you and I are both looking forward to.
Yeah, looking forward to CES. And I just want to highlight with Serve Robotics, one of the most important companies in autonomy. We don't cover them a lot, but we're going to meet with them at CES. Magna. Magna does the upfitting for Waymo. Magna is manufacturing the robots for Serve Robotics. And did you know this, Walt? There's a data sharing agreement where Magna is using Serve Robotics autonomous driving data to develop their own stacks. A lot of good stuff happening with Magna, and we'll learn more at CES. And we got a lot of fun stuff planned at CES. A little elf told me that you're up to something.
Let's just leave it at this. The CES will be their best CES effort, and we're looking forward to seeing a lot of great people in Vegas. Reach out to us if you haven't heard from us. We've been happy to connect. Let's go to a company that I've seen their car. I've sat in their car. They you're familiar with Professor X, and it is Tensor, and the company that is talking about contract manufacturing, and they are very adept at generating press. We have a new news coming from them saying that they're partnering with Zevo, who's going to buy up to 100 Tensor vehicles and make them available through its platform. Now, you might say, who is Zevo? So Zevo, from what I've researched briefly, is kind of like Toro. They do car share, but they're just not, it doesn't seem like a big company. They're in Texas, California, Arizona, Florida, Nevada. It seems like a lot of states. Doesn't seem like they've done a ton of capital raising. Could be wrong on that, but I couldn't really find much. It's not the first supplier that they've tried to do something with. In October, they announced a 1,000 vehicle order with Faraday Future. I'm not sure where that is in terms of EV and rideshare, but 100 Tensor vehicles for a company like Zevo, I mean, it seems like a lot, but again, one of those things that hopefully we'll learn more about at CES.
Interesting times. I'll never forget the time Alex, Roy, and I went to the Faraday Future unveiling at CES, and we all know what happened with Faraday.
Tell us what happened, because I don't know what happened. Oh, we all know what happened with Faraday.
But you don't know what Alex did? So, Alex, we know you listen, we know you watch. Alex went under they have the little ropes that you can't go past. Yeah. He goes under. There was a motor running on an electric vehicle. We got kicked out.
Come on. Is that true?
Yes, and this is true. Alex has a video. Actually, take it even one step further. There's a Facebook video of it. Going way back to Facebook. Alex put a video up on Facebook. So there's a video on Facebook that proves this. That was a CES moment.
Alex Roy sounds like my kind of guy. I love that. I had not heard that story, but that's a good one. I don't know if Tensor is in the same category as that, but we'll see. I still look. I have never been in a. Have you been in the Tensor vehicle? I don't know. Have you?
No, I'd like to go.
Like a moving vehicle, because they have them in California, I think.
No, to the Tensor folks. We know you listen. I know you're on the newsletter. Send me an email. Reply to a newsletter. Walt and I will fly out to California, and we'll love to go for a ride.
100%. Yeah, I will be in San Fran for sure in the first quarter. You know, put us in the car. We'll record part of the podcast in there, like we did in Tesla and the AV rides. What other news do we have this week, Grayson? Maybe something from the trucking world.
Well, we have a lot of big news from the trucking world. We have unconfirmed reports from the Global Mail that Waabi raised $750 million US at a $3 billion valuation. No independent confirmation. So that was the big fundraise news. And then also, I gotta say, is Chris Urmson watching Billy Bob and Landman? Or is he getting inspired by Don Burnett? Because Aurora's expanding to the Permian Basin. And they're going to start hauling fracking sand. I mean, first it was upfitting, then it was Permian Basin. Don Burnett looks smarter by the day.
I love this type of stuff. It's hard not to think that there's some competitive aspect to this, right? Because Kodiak, which Grayson was just referencing, CEO Don Burnett, has come public through a SPAC and I think had a very good earnings call. So maybe this is kind of a shot at them. But look, it is a revenue generating contract, I believe. I've been watching Landman so recently in the updates. Taylor Sheridan's not my favorite. It seems kind of formulaic. I mean, you already know I'm a huge fan of Dallas and Fort Worth and the people there and the climate and everything else. West Texas seems like a place that I would really agree with me. So I really want to encourage, especially as these winter months come up, Grayson, that we do a trip to West Texas, maybe go out to the Permian Basin, wrap in a bunch of, maybe hop it over to Austin and then back into Dallas. I mean, this seems like a great trip in Texas. We shouldn't even wait for Forward Fort Worth. We need to head out to West Texas. What do you think?
Let's go to West Texas. I'll put my cowboy outfit on and we'll go. But I got one request, Walt. A very good friend of mine started his career in the West Texas oil field, so we gotta bring him along. He's an investor in the space now, but he knows this through and through. We gotta go experience the whole Landman thing. I'll get the get up on and let's go. So Chris, Don, host us and we're coming.
Now, I don't know if there's any truth to this storyline, but I don't want to run into any like drug runners or like leaky gas pipes. So I'll stay away from that part of it. But some of those bars they go to sound like a fun places or look like fun places that we should visit.
We definitely should. The scariest thing that I don't want to run into, when Billy Bob's ex-wife calls him on that to me is scary. If we can avoid that, we're good.
And by the way, let me just not confuse things. I am in no way supporting the Dallas Cowboys, only the people of Dallas, their climate, and their great cities. All right, let's go from Dallas and Texas to the foreign autonomy desk. Dun, 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 dun. So Uber and WeRide, first on the list, launched robo-taxi rides in Dubai.
Yes, they did. And drum roll, please. There's an autonomous tier. That's right. Why can't we get it in America? In the UAE, there's an autonomous tier, and Uber specifically called it out in the press release. Matt, good job on that. Two Emirates, two autonomous tiers. The whole world needs it. So good step for Uber there.
That is a great step. Now, kind of like we had back here when Uber announced something, either someone's trying to preempt it or announce something after the fact. So, you have an Uber partner called Momenta, who's a autonomous technology partner, Chinese based. And their partnership with Uber was that they were going to make cars outside of China and the United States. They have an initial plan for a Uber Momenta car in Germany for, I think it's 2026, and maybe this is one of the 10 markets that Dara has been talking about. And yet, lo and behold, here in Abu Dhabi, even though they have this Momenta relationship, like 2 days later, Momenta is announcing another deal with Luma, and Luma is basically like a fleet company. It's basically Uber, except they own the cars, right? It's a company that provides cars. They're partnered with Mercedes, so very high end. Luma's state owned, right? And this is like a subsidiary of a larger like state owned technology company. So I get that they want to support the technology, but just very interesting. Every time Uber wants to do something, it seems like one of their so-called partners is announcing something in the same market, either before them or right after them. What do you make of that?
Bingo was his name, Mo. Yes. It's happening. And you call it partner. Uber is an investor in Momenta, not just a partner, but also an investor. So what's going on here? And then the vehicles, they are Mercedes vehicles. They're very good looking vehicles. That signals to me luxury product, which most of the tiers where they're running at Comfort Plus and at X are not luxury. So what's going on? You dance with somebody, or may walk out the back door with another person. I don't get it.
I think it goes back, in their defense, to what I was stating earlier, which is like, there's going to be multiple partnerships. Just, no OEM is necessarily locked up with a technology company and vice versa. So I think this stuff is no doubt going to happen. It's just interesting that when announcements come out, competitive announcements in the same market seem to follow very quickly. So that's an odd. There's one thing to say like, yeah, this is our partner, but he can partner with someone else and vice versa. But to announce on top of each other in an individual market seems a little odd. And certainly there's nothing, it's not like Luma is trying to take over the world. It's a state-owned, basically rideshare company from what I can tell in Abu Dhabi. We're not going to see Luma, I don't think, like appear in the United States or Europe or something like that. So I think it's a little odd that they wouldn't just try to help Uber in that market, and it would only benefit Abu Dhabi to do so. What else do we have on the foreign autonomy desk?
We're going to shift gears to Germany here. VW has an autonomous prototype called the Gen 1. Interestingly, it's designed not to have a steering wheel, not to have pedals. They are now testing it in Germany with a safety attendant with a joystick to take over. So VW is showing signs of continuing their autonomy push, even while their partner, this goes back to the weird partnerships, Rivian won't share. So small move, small vehicle. It's just testing phase, but it's a good step forward. What do you make of that small little test?
I got a lot of people really focus on this. Oh, is there a steering wheel or not, and same thing with the Cybercab. I got this question earlier in the week. At this stage in the industry, who cares? Like, just get volume on the road. We know that a lot of the rides are only two people. We know Grayson, for long-term listeners, know he doesn't want to share a ride and sit in a car with 4 or 5 different people anyway. So yeah, of course, over the long term, those steering wheels will disappear. It just honestly doesn't impress me that much. Sorry, now in terms of like getting this industry forward, whether you decide to have a wheel in there or not. And to go back to our friends at Tensor, like the fact that their wheel like disappears into the dashboard, super cool, but like there has to be an incremental cost to that is unnecessary. Just pick it one way or another and go with it, and let's get some more cars on the road.
But you know what no pedals, no steering wheel unlocks? alcohol sales. And we've seen that the alcohol industry has come out. So it unlocks that because it takes away the liability. So there's a big opportunity there.
Let's go to the next thing on the autonomy desk. Bolt, company I don't know anything about, is partnering with Stellantis. I know a little bit about them, but not much. Are going to deploy, 100,000 autonomous vehicles. I know that's a big number. I do know that. In Europe by 2035. Tell us about Bolt and Stellantis, Grayson.
So Bolt is an Estonian startup, the most successful startup in Estonia, outside of Skype, which you've covered at Lightshed when they were still in business, and scaling. It is the European version of Uber. They started with doing deals with taxis, and they pivoted to rideshare, and now they're looking to embrace autonomy and grow autonomy. Fast growing company, a company that I think our listeners really need to have on their radar. And Stellantis, the 100,000 vehicles, you and I both know, gives them an immense amount of manufacturing capability. What we don't know, and this is the key, what we don't know, who is the technology partner? Will it be Nvidia? Will it be Wayve? We don't know who that is yet, but we know they're going to run on the Bolt network in Europe, 100,000 vehicles manufactured by Stellantis. So it's something that we're going to need to watch here on the foreign autonomy desk, and perhaps it merges into the bigger show if they get bigger.
Maybe 2035 is a long time out for 100,000 autonomous vehicles. So I think you can pretty much say anything if you're saying it's not going to happen until 2035. Let's move on to the next topic. Vale and Caterpillar are growing their autonomous truck deployment from 14 trucks, I guess, to 90 by 2028, and specifically in Brazil. I mean, is 90 an impressive number? Should we really be that fired up about this?
Big time. They're profitable. They're huge. They're bigger than my house. They're big, and it is the opportunity in off-road autonomy. Sam Abadi, you should come on and talk all about it. One of the leading experts in off-road autonomy in the world, is massive opportunity to scale, massively profitable, because you have to look at the labor costs on off-road autonomy. Look at Brazil and the mines. You look at Western Australia. The labor flies in for 2 weeks. They do the thing. And they come back in 2 weeks to go. They never show up for the thing. So there is a massive labor imbalance. Big deal. Caterpillar is all in on autonomy. They're scaling. Looking forward to getting together with them at Fort Worth. That's in March. But next week, what do we need to look for?
Well, first of all, before we get to next week, I mean, I don't debate anything you just said. All of that stuff is important. But I also now have models on Aurora and Kodiak, and I see the type of numbers that they're going to hit by 2028. And in that context, 90 is just not in the same ballpark as those two companies. So what am I missing?
That's just one deployment. As of today, right now, Caterpillar has the largest deployment of autonomous vehicles in the world, bigger than Waymo, if you combine all of the off-sites that they have.
Got it. So this is just one deal. Understood. Thank you for that clarification. Now, in terms of next week, I got nothing for you. And I hope it's a quiet week, because it is going to be a hellish week for me as we kind of go into the end of the year, get some of our 26 predictions queued up. Do you see anything on the calendar for next week, Grayson?
I know something, and I'm going to tease it. All I'll say is, don't call it a comeback. And you'll see what I mean next week.
Wow. I love the teaser.
The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is scaling. Walt, until next week.